Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Popular Music Books in Process. I'm Francesca Royster, and thanking you all for coming on behalf of our co-organizers, which include Kimberly Mack, Carl Wilson, Antonia Randolph, Gus Stadler, and Eric Weisbard in absentia. You can find our whole calendar of presentations on the IASPM website under the Journal of Popular Music Studies tab. And you can also get on the mailing list if you're not already on it to get all of the reminders, many reminder emails from me. My email is froyster, F-R-O-Y-S-T-E-R, @depaul.edu. You can also catch up on all of the videos of our past sessions on Eric Weisbard's YouTube page. So last week we had a fantastic presentation from Chris Terry, James Spooner, and Joanna McGillicuddy on the new volume, Black Punk Now. Our next session coming up is going to be this coming Monday, sorry about that, Monday, March 13th. Yes, March 13th. I mean, May, sorry, May 13th. I thought that sounded odd. May 13th at 5 o'clock. And John Shaw will be talking about his new work in progress on Louis Armstrong and Afro-modernism. And I'll also be the respondent for that day. So check us out next Monday. And it should be a great conversation. And today we are going to be talking about Taylor Swift. We have, not only do we have Christa Anne Bentley, Kate Galloway, and Paula Clare Harper together with most popular one of our most popular interlocutors, Nate Sloan, who's going to be responding, talking about Taylor Swift, the star, the songs, and the fans, the new volume that's coming out soon. But we also have some of the volume contributors here in the audience as well. So let me tell you a little bit about the volume. And I'll introduce our folks, and then I will turn things over to them. And I promise I'll turn off my email things as soon as I can. Okay, so this conversation today is going to provide a preview of the forthcoming edited volume, Taylor Swift, The Star, the Songs, the Fans, the first book-length academic project on global superstar Taylor Swift. So bringing together interdisciplinary and an international array of scholars, writers, and practitioners, the edited collection positions Swift as a prism through which we can imagine intersecting issues in contemporary music industries and media ecosystems, from copyright and pandemic creation to multimedia star texts and digital fan practices, and even professional sports. The collection's co-editors are going to be joining conversation with Nate Sloan from USC and Switched On Pop, a fellow Swift scholar whose work on the Star reaches both academic and popular audiences. So let me introduce you then to Christa Anne Bentley. Christa is an assistant professor of musicology at the University of Arkansas, studying the politics of music at the intersection of folk and popular song. Her current research examines the professional songwriting of the 1970s singer-songwriter movement, which has led to the publication in the Cambridge Companion to the Singer-Songwriter. And her book in progress is Feeling Free, the Politics of the Singer-Songwriter Movement in the United States. Sorry about that. Okay, Kate Galloway is assistant professor at Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute. I always get that wrong. In her in-progress monograph, Remix, Reuse, Recycle, Music, Media Technologies, and Remediating the Environment examines how and why contemporary artists mix and recycle sounds, music, and texts encoded with environmental knowledge. She's co-edited 2 special journal issues of American Music and 20th Century Music with K.E. Goldschmidt and Paula Harper that address the creative and social phenomena of internet music communities and practices of listening on the internet. And Claire Paula Clare Harper is a musicologist who studies music, sound, and the internet. She's currently an assistant professor in the Department of Music at the University of Chicago. Her current manuscript project, Viral Musicking and the Rise of Noisy Platforms, considers online virality, as a significant site of 21st century musical practice. And that is a word that I don't say out loud that often. She's also co-editing this volume.
Okay, thank you so much.
Okay, and Nate Sloan is a musicologist.
That's the plan. I appreciate it.
Who researches jazz, classical, and popular
Bye-bye.
music. She teaches at the University of Southern California Thornton School of Music and co-hosts the Vulture podcast Switched on Pop. Nate is co-author of Switched on Pop, How Popular Music Works and Why It Matters, from Oxford University Press. And he's contributed articles about music to the New York Times, Musical Quarterly, and the Journal of Musicology. He appears frequently as a music commentator for NPR, CBS, PBS, and CNN. And now, without any further ado, I'm going to turn things over to our panelists. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. From our emails over the course of the day and last night, talking about our structure, it was a question of like, who remembers the origin story for this book and how it all began, and how we started talking about it all. And we have various different recollections because it's been this kind of ongoing process over quite a few years at this point. And it was at the 2018, I don't think it was 2016, it wasn't that far back, the 2018 AMS Pop early career workshop at Case Western University, where we all kind of like didn't necessarily meet for the first time, but had time to have sustained conversations that were running back and forth to say the coffee at a conference. And we were talking to Christa in particular about the Taylor Talk pop-up conference on 1989 that she collaborated on in, I think it was 2016. And as the first small event we knew of that was a Taylor Swift focused event. And we were all in various stages of other projects, but wanted to come together to work on something. And that's where the conversations first started. And we had emails back and forth and messaging in the next AMS Pop workshop 2 years later. And then it was during the pandemic where we felt the need to do something, and also we're all still getting used to Zoom and wanted to hold a conference, and realized that holding a virtual conference that could have international participation and possibly large-scale audience participation was a venue that we wanted to explore in much more detail. And that's where coming together in community to discuss Taylor Swift ended up being our primary goal. And then following the conference, both leading up to the conference and following the conference, we wanted to do kind of something more sustained with that material. We'd been thinking about a publication or a book leading up to the conference. Paula and I were working on various projects already together. And so because of the conversations that took place within that space, but then other conversations that took place with other scholars who weren't available for the conference at the time, or were starting up Taylor Swift work, or found out about the work that we were doing, we brought together this group of scholars that are now comprised in this book, some of which were original participants in the Taylor Swift Study Day in the summer of 2021, and some others that came on board as we realized that they were in dialogue with the same conversations around media, stars, songwriting, and fandom that we were very much invested in. And that's where we bring ourselves to today, where we shipped off the manuscript to Genevieve last week. We're waiting to find out what we need to change, and we're very much in progress towards production at this point. So I'm now going to hand it over to, I think, Paula, who's going to start off with a more kind of introduction to the project itself.
Yeah. And I think one of the things we want to do as well, so that's our origin story. And as we, as Kate's intro suggests, there were a number of people who were doing some Swift scholarship, but it's certainly something that has really grown over the course of the project, really grown as an area of study, really grown as a focus of both like academic and popular interest, the idea that one could study Taylor Swift in a variety of serious ways. And we're, of course, like deeply indebted to and in dialogue with the various folks who are doing that scholarship alongside us. So, of course, the late great Travis Steimling, as well as Mary Fogarty and Gina Arnold, who put together a great special issue on Taylor Swift that Nate and maybe some of the other folks in the room were involved in as well. So definitely like up and coming projects of Swift scholarship as well that are part of this rich and wild and overwhelming, sometimes in good ways, sometimes in bad, ecosystem that we found ourselves in with this book. So the game plan is we're going to read you some of the introduction to our collected volume. Then we're gonna have some Q&A between the three of us and Nate. And then we're gonna open it up for questions from everyone. So I am starting us off with the introduction to our book, Taylor Swift, the star, the songs, the fans. And just want to say that I'm delighted to be in this room with you all and to be in conversation about this book in a sustained way as it this long process comes into fruition. So thanks everybody for being here. All right, so Taylor Swift, the star, the songs, the fans. This isn't a book about Taylor Swift. Wait, come back. What we mean by that is, despite the title, the purpose of this book isn't to catalog the life and work of 21st century pop music superstar Taylor Swift exhaustively or comprehensively. This is not a biography. Its chapters do not progress in a neat chronological fashion from her Pennsylvania upbringing through her country music success and pop crossover, and across her various entanglements with romantic partners, creative collaborators, and industry antagonists. Swift's discography, now asserted as the tidy framing for periodized eras by the star herself, does not receive album-by-album scrutiny. Although books doing all of the above might, and we suspect will, be produced by other authors, books both inside academia and for mass market audiences, those projects are not the project of this book. What is the project of this book then? It is perhaps best encapsulated as the answer to a question that the editors of this volume have received many times in the process of developing, writing, editing, and publicizing it, and one which anyone doing similar scholarship has also been posed. Why Taylor Swift? Why take up Taylor Swift as a subject of academic study? Why her among all contemporary artists? Clearly, she's popular and unavoidably newsworthy, but what is there to learn from dedicating serious scrutiny to her music, her celebrity, her biography, her fans? Our answer is that Taylor Swift is a prismatic figure for the musical world of the 21st century. Hold Swift up to the light, and it becomes possible to pick out an array of discrete topics for inquiry and investigation. Music industry topics like songwriting, live performance, genre. Questions of identity and politics regarding whiteness, girlhood, femininity, sexuality. Legal issues of copyright and ownership. Fan community and consumption. Social media, the environment, sports, cat videos. To study Taylor Swift is to acknowledge and assert that the texts of mass pop culture are worth investigating, as both compelling affective objects in themselves and as portals through which one might grasp at larger questions of politics, economy, sociality. Studying Taylor Swift isn't superficial poptimism. This book's chapters offer a variety of critical perspectives on Swift's branding, output, and reception. Portable frameworks for investigating future Swiftian output, as well as other popular music figures, texts, phenomena, and communities.
The book's subtitle, The Star, the Songs, the Fans, partitions the prismatic potential of Taylor Swift into broad categories that comprise the book's structure. In each of the volume's 3 sections, authors deal with topics that relate to one of these. the star herself, her brand and star text, the lyrics, themes, and meanings that permeate Swift's musical output, and the way that her fans interact with her work and with each other. Fans reenact and ventriloquize Swift and exhaustively compile Swift lore on podcasts, YouTube, social media, fan forums, their bedrooms, and other spaces where fandom is expressed and shared in public and private. In some ways, this tripartite form might look like an expansion of the well-worn life and works formula deployed in many biographies of a single creator figure. But as we stated, this book is intended to be neither biographical nor exhaustive. It might be more productive to think of the framing as explicitly moving around three corners of Wendy Griswold's cultural diamond, a sociological framework developed to investigate the connections among four elements: cultural objects, symbols, beliefs, values, and practices; cultural creators, including the organizations and systems that produce and distribute cultural objects; cultural receivers, the people who experience cultural and specific cultural objects; and the social world, the context in which culture is created and experienced. Our section titles indicate chapters focus around creator, the star, objects, the songs, and receivers, the fans. The fourth point in the diamond, the social world in which Swift is experienced, is explored across all chapters, moving from the general and global to the local and particular. I'm going to talk a little bit about the chapters, and there are some authors, so I don't know if you want to raise your hand when I talk about your chapter, but there are a lot of people here, so it's great to see everyone. The star section involves analyses of how Swift negotiates her identity through her live performance persona, with a chapter on the 1989 tour by Phoebe Hughes, and my own chapter on her acoustic sets. Kate Galloway discusses the mediated environments of Swift's stage productions and studio recordings. Jocelyn Neal takes on issues of Swift's ownership of her own songs and recordings, and Annalot Prins analyzes how Swift's persona vacillates between control and powerlessness. The songs section includes discussions of lyrics, with Lauren Alex Hooper exploring intratextuality across Swift's albums, and Nikki Watkinson uncovering the trope of writing and rewriting in Swift's work. A number of contributions also offer close readings of individual sounds, what they sound like and what their lyrics communicate, with frameworks on rhetoric, register, and timbre that might be portable to other works by Swift or in 21st century popular music more broadly. Cameron Stewart analyzes timbre in Swift's duets, and Chelsea Burns discusses embodied listening and repetition through Taylor's versions. Ailsa Lipscomb builds on the idea of embodied listening and disability in her chapter on You're Losing Me. James Barker provides queer readings along lines of genre and songs from Swift's Fearless, and Alyssa Barna analyzes Swift's use of form and temporality in the various versions of All Too Well. Finally, in the fans section, Georgia Carroll investigates hierarchies within Swift's fan community. Melissa Avdeef questions journalists' use of polarizing tweets surrounding the release of You Need to Calm Down, and Paula Harper analyzes the interpretive sleuthing strategies of Swift's fans. Tiago Suarez and Liana Genuino even show how Swift has become a symbol of good luck for a Brazilian soccer team.
Beyond stars, songs, and fans, the chapters in this collection also link thematically along other lines, centering Swift as a lens for theorizing some of the most pressing topics in the humanities. One such theme is media, with Watkinson and Carroll analyzing material culture and Swift's album artifacts and assets. Carroll, Avdeef, and Harper center Swiftian discourse in social media among fans and journalists, and Barna, Burns, and Galloway, myself, discuss recordings of a form of mediation. Perspectives on Swift's copyright issues appear in Neal's discussion of licensing mechanical rights. The volume also has a significant amount of research drawing on queer studies, with Barker's chapter discussing the metronormative in country music, and Harper delving into the meaning of online conspiracies regarding Swift's romantic relationship with model Karlie Kloss, and the participatory strategies used by fans to queer Swift's texts. Finally, issues of place and space in Swift's music also play out in discussions of both live performance venues, ranging from Hughes' chapter on stadium tours, Bentley's chapter on small clubs, and Galloway's chapter on recording music environments. As we mentioned in this introduction's outset, we are frequently asked, why Taylor Swift? The connective threads above that we've discussed thus far and the chapters that follow in this volume provide some of our answers. There are, in fact, an abundance of responses to this popular yet loaded question. It is a question that fans, academics, and ACA-fans engaged with in popular cultures that they can't avoid. Although our knee-jerk reaction, why not Taylor Swift, has a much smaller word count, we present this collection instead as a prismatic but not exhaustive exploration of what can be learned about the 21st century musical landscape through close, critical attention to Swift, her music, and her fan communities. Swift has demonstrated her ability to reinvent herself over the course of her already long career, and as editors and contributors, we're excited to see and hear where her work goes next. I guess it's over to Nate.
All right. Thank you for that eloquent reading. So I'm very thrilled to be in discussion with you all today. Because I'm very excited by this volume. I think your casting of Swift as this prismatic figure is very compelling. I might refer to her as a mirror ball, as a homage to her song of the same name from folklore. But I agree. People look at Taylor Swift and they see something reflected back at them. And this book seems like an effort to capture some of those reflections. I also really appreciate the fact that the middle part of this project is the songs, because I do find it distressing sometimes that there's such a surfeit of Taylor Swift criticism, and yet so little of it really makes an effort to dive into the material, the composition, the texture, the sonics of her music. So I think this book represents
I guess it's a lot of data.
an important corrective in that way. And this isn't, not to take Francesca's job here, but if everyone could mute their Zooms, that'd be great. And if not, perhaps whoever is hosting the meeting has the power to do that as well from their device. So I have so many questions, and I am certain our audience does too. So I'll just ask a few of them here, and then we'll turn it over to them. My first question involves curating the contributors to this volume and the content of the essays themselves. As you've said, it can be almost overwhelming to approach Taylor Swift. There is a lot of excitement and perhaps a lot of danger. It's a very loaded topic. What was the process like once? I want to know a little bit more here. Like, did these categories, fans, song, star, emerge as you sifted through the contributions that you had? Were those the categories you knew you wanted to use, and then you found ways to fit the essays into them? Out of all the ways that you could approach this manifold figure, how did you decide that these are the key contributions? I would love to be let into that editorial process a little bit.
Yes, I think that the structure came after we held the study day. And Paula and Kate, can you remember what we called the study day? It was like
It was so much
narrative,
worse.
media, digital media, social media, something.
Digital media. There's another string of a series of words. And I know we considered using that for the book, but as we heard everyone's contributions in the study day, and then those who signed on for the book, and then those that we kind of invited after the fact, we found that these, like, we wanted to think about the various different markets that the book could possibly reach as well. And so kind of bringing it down to like kind of this tripartite structure that could reach both academics, students,
Mm.
fans, would be more accessible than the title of our event. Oh, thank you, Brian.
Yeah,
Taylor
Brian's on it.
Swift, narrative, digital media, and music for the Zoom and for the recording. And so we started thinking about other structural markers that we could use. And these ones started emerging from our conversations, but we were also struggling with the fact that many of the papers presented in that study day that's then were developed for the volume, plus the additional invited chapters that really were being invited up to the wire, could fall in various different categories. Like they did, some could fall in the fans, also the star, and we like that overlap that the papers were also speaking to each other, and we could reorganize the volume in various different ways so that like mine could be in a different section, Chris's could be a different section, to have that conversation going. So we didn't want to structure where the chapters could only fit in those sections as well.
Yeah, as I was the team member who could not remember our origin story, I also don't remember the origin story of this lovely tripartite structure, apart from the fact that as academics, we do love a tripartite structure. But yeah, I think that, I think Kate really got it. We had something much clunkier and much more of a first draft with the study day. And here it does really feel like on the one hand, we've got something that sets out a pretty tidy way of framing Taylor Swift that is then complicated by the way in which the chapters speak across that tripartite division and to each other.
Mm.
Yeah, I also think from the study day, there were people coming from so many different disciplines, and the structure kind of maybe shows the authors. Let me back up. But from the study day, there were a few people who were really focused on star text, a few people whose first entry point were the songs themselves, and a few people who are really studying fans as kind of their first entry point. And as Kate said, they all really mixed together, but those kind of first questions came through really strongly from the study day, especially because there were so people coming from so many different disciplines. And I think that's where it sort of came from.
I think, well, thank you for regaling us with that editorial process, and I think the resultant structure is very effective and probably a good heuristic to use in general when approaching a pop star of this magnitude, and moving out, sort of using that Griswold model to sort of move out from the almost total eclipse of Swift stardom to the actual material, and then the way people interact and reshape that material, which is maybe in some ways the most important part of the whole thing. So let's go deeper into something that you brought up a little bit, Kate, and you addressed in the introduction as well. I'm curious about the question of audience and the question, and maybe this related question of poptimism, a term that I think a lot of us our ears perked up when we heard that. So on one hand, I totally relate to the desire to have this book resonate with an audience beyond other academics. At the same time, I see the value of this book in precisely the fact that it is sort of insulated from the wider critical apparatus and the hordes of Swifties and haters on individually on social media, because it is sort of refreshing and sort of a breath of fresh air to have a certain critical distance that this volume brings. At the same time, I can see, oh, well, this is, I hear in your description, like this is an attempt to connect with people who might be fans or curious about Taylor Swift, but who wouldn't normally pick up a more sort of scholarly volume. And as soon as you do that, you start to ask yourself, well, what does this mean when Pitchfork can't even run a review of Taylor Swift's latest album, The Tortured Poets Department, with a byline because they're concerned for their writers' safety? What does it mean to try and engage with a wider audience? That wasn't. Thank you for the emendation, Carl, that not Pitchfork, Paste magazine. So I'm curious, what are the tensions here in both trying to make this work accessible and also maybe acknowledging that with that accessibility comes a sort, you have to sort of wade into a critical discourse that doesn't always have the same clarity and objective distance that is like what we might treasure about a scholarly approach.
I will maybe start in, and I mean, my glib initial response is something that Kate said in the warm up to this, I think before the record button was hit, which is that, like, yes, we will be locking down our social media when the book drops. So I don't, the less glib version of that is I don't think we're necessarily immune to that response. I think there's a possibility, not an inevitability, but a possibility that this book could get picked up in weird viral currents and circulated in strange and maybe noxious ways to some elements of various fandoms that don't approve of its existence or its project, whether that's Swifties or radically not Swifties, perhaps. But I think that on the one hand, I think we see it as being something important and valuable, and that we as co-editors, but also as a suite of authors, are well equipped to do. And that we're thinking about, hopefully, that this book could be something that could get picked up by a Swiftie, but that this is also a book that is maybe more primarily geared towards academics, but that there's also a phenomenon that's happening right now where folks are spinning up courses in which they're doing precisely courses in university settings, say, where they're doing kind of precisely the work that we're talking about in the introduction, and they're using Taylor Swift as this figure that through which they can open portals into lots of different areas of interest, right? I think that's a kind of shared conceit between this book and a lot of the Taylor Swift courses that people ask me about. Hey, Paula, have you heard about this Taylor Swift course at XYZ University? Are you teaching it? No, I don't teach there. But that I think that's maybe precisely the place where that kind of delightful, hopefully productive tension between fandom and critical engagement can occur. I know I have tons of students who have lots of feelings about Taylor Swift in my non-Taylor Swift courses. And so hopefully one of the things that we're thinking about is the ways in which this could be a resource for those kinds of engagements that we are seeing pop up right now.
Yeah, and I'll add to that and just say part of the accessibility is simply the way we tried to edit chapters with a mind for language. And when larger theoretical concepts are used and they are a part of this book, trying to make it accessible or explained to people who might not have taken a larger critical theory graduate course or something like that. So that's part of the accessibility of the book as well. And I also think the range of chapters and something that we say in the introduction offer multiple interpretations sometimes of the same songs. And one of the things that maybe is a buffer against some of the things you brought up, Nate, is talking about what it means to have multiple interpretations or to engage dialogue rather than dogmatic meanings of an artist's work. And we talked about that a little bit in parts of the introduction that we didn't read for you, but that is one aim of the book. That isn't always how Swift discourse works on the internet, but might be another way to look at it.
I find that Kate, feel free to jump in, but I'll just say that I find that very compelling because I think, well, one thing is the volume does, hearing what you just said, it makes me think about how the volume does present a number of models for thinking about this music, this figure. and so the fact that, right, that two different authors could have two different perspectives on the same material is a great example of that, and that there isn't one concrete or as you said, dogmatic approach to this this music, this repertoire. The diversity of the contributors also reflects that as well. Not only the conceptual approaches to the material, but their backgrounds. We have you know, a musician among the contributors. We have people of various academic backgrounds, some more like scientific, social sciences, some more from a music place, some more from a literary background. So I think that works well, additionally, to model this idea that you have to have a sort of multi-perspectival approach to an artist like this. So one thing I find that to be a unique challenge about a project like this is that Taylor Swift is a moving target. You know, there between and certainly with, you know, publishing and the amount of time it takes from the conception of a project to its actual publication. A lot can happen in the pop world, and a lot did happen. We had the biggest tour of all time. We had not just an album and an anthology, a 30+ song anthology drop. What is it like to be editing this path-breaking volume and at the same time watching this star develop in front of your eyes and sort of not being able to do anything about it? But if I had a more, I guess, serious question, it would be how when you're editing the volume, how do you try and sort of future-proof it to a degree when you do have an artist whose career is unfolding in front of you?
Oh, that's a great question, Nate. Because there were a couple times in the kind of editing revision process where we spoke with authors who were like, should I try and squeeze this in? Should I take this much further? And we were trying to keep these relatively short chapters so that they could be readable and teachable, which helped us with that argumentation. But there were a few conversations I had with authors where it was like, we can't possibly cover everything and keep moving it forward. And as much as we're trying not to kind of date the book to a particular kind of cutoff point in Swift's career, that's also inevitable because there is going to be a publication date. Through one of our iterations of discussions, we wanted to have a kind of a quick and easy, dirty kind of timeline to Taylor Swift for those who are less familiar of the kind of the benchmarks. But that was one of our last decisions to edit that out because it would very specifically date the book, but also where do we create the cutoff point? Because we were in the thick of it going, is it the Super Bowl? Is it the latest release? Is it this? At what point do we kind of cut off that timeline? And just in the end, we decided to scrap that entirely because was it going to actually have the function that we wanted it to? So this was a particular kind of editorial challenge that I haven't encountered in my larger research project or in some of the other edit collections I've been working on, but it's something I think all three of us have dealt with working on kind of contemporary musical topics that we have to strategically draw the lines in certain places and kind of just and deal with that situation, knowing that we can't be comprehensive and that we have to kind of stop revising and stop moving that goalpost on a constant basis in order to kind of achieve and just meet a deadline, just the practicality of it all. And which is also why I think in the introduction we say this isn't an exhaustive text because this is a living person who's creating en masse that who knows what will be out next by the time the book is out. And just keeping that in mind. And when we're working on contemporary figures who are living and creating and working, that even the narratives of what they're doing could significantly shift by the time that what we publish on the kind of academic timeline could completely change the argumentation in a year's time, let alone maybe 6 months' time.
Yeah, and I would just add to that that I feel like this is something that I deal with a lot as somebody who works on the internet, right? As somebody who's currently working on TikTok, which maybe won't exist, and certainly before any of the things that I'm writing right now about TikTok get published, TikTok may well stop existing, right? Sorry, that's my own personal problems. But that when in that situation, like in this one, I think that really provides a productive impetus to make sure that what we're doing is portable and is something that both is a complete statement and isn't going to be entirely determined by what comes next, right? But that also has frameworks that are going to be useful for other kinds of scholarship, or maybe other potential Swift scholarship, maybe not. But yeah, I think an urge towards portability and relevance, regardless of what comes next, is a real challenge, but definitely I think something that can be a great beneficial outcome.
Yeah.
I was going to hop in and say that the soccer chapter is a great example of this, because everyone's talking about Swift in the NFL, but this chapter comes, talks about 5 years earlier, and it is a chance for people to get a much broader context of Swift's, like the use of Swift in sports, or that kind of music and sports crossover. And it was tempting to say, oh, do we need to add something in about the Super Bowl? But actually, people can make those connections on their own, and having this bigger view, we think, is maybe even more important than kind of the latest news cycle.
Yeah, and that chapter was like both beautiful and infuriating, because it was totally predictive of like the discourse and the way that it kind of diagnoses strategy in a Taylor Swift like large scale sports crossover is exactly diagnostic of then what did happen with the NFL. So it's a great chapter. Look out for it as you're looking out for all the great chapters in the book.
Thank you. Those are really thoughtful answers, and I do really take seriously what you're saying, that this book will continue to provide a foundation for people to think through Swift's future work, which in itself, as one of the articles in the volume argues, is incredibly intertextual and intratextual to begin with, and certainly the level of engagement with Taylor Swift means that even songs that were released in years past, like Cruel Summer, for instance, which was during the Eras Tour, reappeared on the Billboard charts in the top 10. And when Swift releases re-recordings, those songs also go up on the charts and become things that are sort of actively listened to and dissected again in real time. So I think not only in general are you making a strong case for why a volume like this can still be authoritative, but even why it may be more valuable for really dedicating itself to a panoptic vision of a artist at a moment in time. Well, I feel like we've gotten into the ethos and some of the process of making the volume, and I want to be mindful of the time. So I feel like this could be a good juncture to toss it to our esteemed hosts, our moderators from the PMIB series, and they'll solicit some questions from the audience.
Yeah, thanks so much, Nate. And we have time and space for more questions. So please put them in the chat. We do have a couple already. The first one comes from Janet and Jonathan, or Jonathan.
It already was answered, really.
It's mostly my question. And Paula discussed it a little bit. My question is how do the editors work with the balancing of a critique versus a celebration? It's not to say that this is unique to writing about Taylor Swift. I think all of us who write about pop culture and music have to think about it. But I'm just wondering, in her case, because there's been so much critique, shall we say, was that a concern in putting together the volume, this balancing of celebration and critique?
Yes, absolutely. And yeah, I think your point, right, that talking to this audience, especially, this is a group of folks who are very familiar with this as an issue. So, you know, there's a bit of preaching to the choir, exactly as you say. And that there was, in some of our conversation too, we had conversations about to what extent we felt like we needed to revisit and re-articulate some of the kind of like long-standing conversations that have been had already in pop music scholarship around, you know, what do you do with critique of female artists and female fans that feels very gendered. And, you know, I think we talked about that a little bit less than we might have, because we felt like for our readers, it was probably going to be pretty covered ground and pretty, you know, exhausted territory. And, you know, even when we did the, like, it's not just poptimism. So, you know, I don't know. Only what I feel like is, you know, the most justified shade at poptimism there, that we were really thinking about trying to walk a line between doing our work as scholars and not falling into the kind of like easy traps on either side of kind of glowing fandom or you know, grouchy negativity at pop music as a cipher for larger states of the world in any direction. So it, you know, it was a conversation that was ongoing and that we have been having around these topics, you know, for all of the years that Kate took us through at the outset. This is a long conversation.
And I know we had some conversations with authors who were kind of verging on, like they identify as ACA fans and were trying to negotiate their role as an academic, their role as a fan to the community, and their fear possibly of offending the community, and also encouraging them to kind of take ownership of their critique as well, to be that that critical fan who embraces but also can unpack the music and the media in meaningful ways. But also to think about, okay, how the book could be received as a whole. There might be one particular chapter that really rubs someone the wrong way, but there's another chapter that speaks to them and their voice, and that balance of reading those chapters off of each other might alleviate some of those kind of those tensions that inherently happen also when you read any kind of edited collection, where there's chapters you love, there's chapters you hate, there's methodologies you love, others that you hate, but they all end up working together to create a multi-perspective collection.
Thanks for trying to handle that one. Yep.
All right, great. Christa, Paula, and Kay, we wanted to encourage you to, if any questions come in that seem like they're pertinent to any of the authors' works, or the authors who are here, to include the authors in their response. And we're inviting the authors to respond. The next question is coming from Brian, right?
Hello, everyone. It's so nice to see you. Congratulations on this book. I look forward to reading it. So you were talking earlier about the sort of rapid growth in Taylor Swift studies, and that's a thing that in the sort of academic side of things, and this is something I've witnessed quite a lot firsthand, actually. And even most recently, I think I mentioned this to some of you the other day, that I was at a local like popular culture association regional meeting, and there was, I think, no fewer than 12 Taylor Swift papers, all by sort of like young women academics who were, you know, grappling with these ideas. And so it struck me as a really exciting opportunity for popular music studies in general, that it was bringing all these people in through their own sort of fandoms or interests. But it also made me, you know, I guess, hesitant a bit as we've been talking about fandoms here. And so I was wondering if you would just speak generally about like your feelings on the sort of rapid proliferation of Taylor Swift studies, and maybe any sort of like pitfalls you'd hope that it could avoid, or hopes that you might have for the future of it.
Okay, I don't need to, sorry, I keep jumping in. I don't need to go on my like grouchy soapbox if somebody else wants to take this.
Go for it.
Yay, grouchy soapbox.
I've got a couple things I can say too, because like like, and mine's quick, and Paula, then you can jump back in. I've never been a composer studies person, yet this is the second time I've been kind of segmented into a composer studies. For those who don't know what I kind of did before, I worked with R. Murray Schafer on his outdoor Patria cycle and dealt with a very different type of cultish fandom in that community. And then I find myself in composer studies again. And so I've been asked a few times that even at RPI, are you going to teach a Taylor Swift course? And I'm like, is this really the community for it? But also, is this something I'm invested in? And for me, it's like putting figures in their work in dialogue with others in the community, or how can we create, as Paula was saying, a framework that's portable to other figures or other courses. It's been important to me. How can we think about kind of fandom and digital media using Swift to talk about others, which is how, like, I use thou Schafer and soundscape theory in my chapter on Taylor Swift to talk about soundscapes in contemporary media cultures. And that's always been something that's been more important to me and a lot of the students I've worked with. But also there is this growing Swift field and the number of courses alone. And there are resources out there. There are articles on Taylor Swift. There's Gina and Mary's collection. There's pieces that I've published and others have published that don't get picked up by those courses, not necessarily because they're not accessible to an undergraduate population, but because they're about music. And I think when we were putting this together, we're thinking about, well, if these courses are going to continue to be developed and taught, yeah, can this be a resource to bring more music and more about the songs, as Nate was saying at the outset, into this dialogue? Because one thing about the potential pitfall of Swift studies that I'm seeing in the courses and some of the conversations is that moving almost entirely away from talking about the sonics. And there are other valuable things to talk about, but also how can we keep the sonics into those conversations? And so that's something I'd really like to see continue being part of the conversation and the courses and the dialogue if Swift studies is going to become and a subfield of popular music studies or fan culture or something else. Back to Paula.
Yeah, I think I've calmed down from my grumpy soapbox. I think that putting it as like diagnosing Swift studies as composer studies, kind of, and yanking in all of the 19th century ideological baggage that brings, I think is a pretty apt move there from Kate. And so, this again, I feel like I'm on the tightrope that I just mentioned, right? That I think that there are all manner of naysayers, and I don't necessarily want to align myself with those folks. But then I also think too that there are that my personal diagnostic of the centrality of Taylor Swift to all discourse, a phenomenon that I and we are all participating in, is not great, right? I think that speaks to things about the contemporary attention economy and economic winner-take-all economic structures that are ultimately not particularly good, right? And I think that the spinning up of Taylor Swift courses, while there are some great and perhaps energizing things about that, maybe like definitely also has a dark side to it in terms of the incentives of the neoliberal university, right? So yeah, that's basically my soapbox. I think Kate's point about making this a resource to kind of bring in the sonic and make that as accessible as possible, right alongside the more common way that Taylor Swift is introduced as a kind of like lyrics text only kind of text. Yeah, I would love for this to be a corrective in that way.
And I'll jump in and say that there are wonderful chapters in this book that discuss timbre, and even Paula's chapter discusses the lack of discussion of timbre in Swifties output. Chelsea's chapter discusses timbre in just like this beautiful essay. And like really, really wonderful chapters across the collection. So I really I hope that that will be a reason why people come to this book, because that's been such an interesting development in music theory and popular music studies, but also because Swift writes songs that are sounds and more than words. And then secondly, I think that we've also tried in the chapters, Swift as a prism, but also if this is a reason why people are coming to popular music studies is through Swift, that there are examples in the chapters that do point readers to other examples, right? In the re-recordings copyright chapter that Jocelyn Neal has, she talks about other instances where people have re-recorded their tracks, right? And potentially a way for people to say, oh, okay, people have done this before Taylor Swift. What's different about what Swift is doing? And I hope that it does kind of point people to other artists who are worthy of study. I was going to say Alyssa's chapter as well, talks a lot about harmonic structures and chord structures. So if they're reading about All Too Well, they might learn about a doo-wop progression and all of the songs that use that formula, right? So I hope that if people are coming to popular music studies because of Swift, there are little hints for them to go find other music and other types of popular music studies as well.
Yeah, and I think to bring that point in conversation with what Carl just put in the chat, that like also this phenomenon is not new, right? People were teaching Beyonce classes, people were teaching Madonna classes, right? That this is this kind of a phenomenon existing in academia and existing within university structures in the way that it's kind of springing up around Taylor Swift. This is also not new. Again, it's just got it's the kind of volume is turned up on it. So there's a way in which the phenomenon in which this book is participating is also something with longer historical precedent.
Okay, I believe that,
Okay. Oh, sorry.
yes,
I'm
I'm
having
sorry. You are here. Okay,
I am
hi.
here, but I'm having a lot of Wi-Fi issues. So I've actually lost the chat. I think Jody was the next person to go, and then I might just pass things over to Carl to take care of from then on. Thank you.
Hi,
Jody?
can you guys hear me? My turn?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I'm having some funky Wi-Fi connectivity issues here, and also my AirPods are like rapidly running out. So let's hope this works. But hi, thanks so much to everybody for this talk. I have I'll just riff for one quick second on something you guys were talking about in terms of Swift studies and the kind of hegemony of Taylor Swift, in it's also an issue in journalism. One of the more alarming developments of the past year, I thought, was when the Gannett, is that how you pronounce it, news organization hired a Taylor Swift reporter, someone dedicated full time to the Taylor Swift beat, and also a Beyonce reporter. This kind of like privileging of pop's 1% at a time when there's when music criticism as a whole is declining rapidly, and there's aren't jobs, struck me as a alarming development. So just want to put that out there. But let's move on to my question, which is sort of a, I don't know if the question so much is like a comment that I might open up to people. I saw that Phoebe Hughes has a chapter in the book about whiteness, and there's a lot of talk, both in scholarship, in the academic world, and in it's criticism in the press about whiteness, but maybe a little less about Taylor Swift and Black music, which is obviously a huge topic in her career. She's a millennial. She's come of age in the hip hop era. She's been a hip hop fan, notably a hip hop fan her entire career. At the very beginning of her career, when she was, even prior to the release of her first album, she did live shows. She covered Beyonce and Rihanna. I don't have to go through the whole list, but some things I jotted down were, of course, the very messy morality play with the Kanye West MTV imbroglio, which has continued to reverberate for more than a decade now. The controversies over the Shake It Off video, controversy over Taylor Swift covering September, her, kind of set to with Nicki Minaj. And there's all kinds of ways that her career is inflected by this question of appropriation, race, what her relationship to Black music. But what interests me most is the way that Black music filters, and hip hop in particular, filters into her music, into her cadences as a singer. I thought it's especially interesting in the case of the Reputation album, and the fact that that album is, as it was kind of clear at the time, but as she's framed it in interviews since, was in her kind of peak moment of personal abject. She suddenly was rapping. That strikes me as quite interesting. That sort of continued a little bit on Lover, but then vanished completely on her, Back to the Land albums, Folklore and Evermore, kind of a retreat into whiteness. So obviously there's a lot here, but I'm wondering if anybody has things to say about Taylor Swift and her relationship to Black music. I'll shut up now, and I hope you heard me, because my...
Okay, I promise I'm not talking. I was just going to say that, like, in case people were not aware of the most recent little nugget in the timeline that Jody just laid out. Also, people have been there is a strand of the discourse with the Kendrick Drake beef that's like they're fighting over who gets to be Taylor Swift's best rapper friend, which is made me want to die. So that's all I have to say about that. But I don't know if maybe Christa, you wanted to.
Yeah, sure. And I mean, we didn't prep authors that they could jump on, but Phoebe, feel free to jump in if you would like to speak on your chapter. But you did mention Phoebe Hughes. She talks about Taylor Swift sort of negotiating age through her 1989 world tour, sort of breaking out of country and into adulthood through pop. There's also Annalot Prin's chapter, which discusses the Shake It Off video and Wildest Dreams, and her kind of discourse around apolitical discourse coded as white, and how she also discusses Swift's star text being co-opted by the alt-right, and how that became a problem for Swift, saying that she is in control of everything she does, but she's also powerless over what other people do to her, as a way to kind of understand her whiteness. Oh, sorry, 1 second. There's someone at my door who, even though I put a sticky note saying don't come in, 1 second. Phoebe, do you want to jump in?
Sure. So I think maybe this was mentioned. My chapter is on Taylor Swift. It's called Taylor Swift on Tour, or something of that nature. And I look at the 1989 World Tour as this kind of transitional moment where Swift is now presenting herself as an adult, and kind of critically thinking about the ways in which that she kind of operationalizes race as a tool for doing that. So thinking about whiteness as kind of central to her presenting herself in this kind of young girl, singer-songwriter, country artist framing, and then how whiteness, and I think I take a very critical look at white feminism and this kind of pop feminism moment of 2013, 2014, and that kind of moment when this record was coming out that is very relevant still now. How that was kind of what she was doing on tour. I look, yes, yeah, the squad. And I look at some of her performances on that tour, specifically with Blank Space, and sort of what she does with those performances to kind of make herself seem like now she's so mature, and she's giving this kind of older sister advice to maybe her younger fans. But the way that those performances and a lot of that tour is still very centered on her. She has no female backup dancers. She's the only visible tall, skinny white woman on stage in that show. So that's kind of where I go with Taylor Swift and race, and that kind of critical piece of whiteness specifically.
I don't know.
Anyone else there?
I don't know if anyone discusses the specific kind of rapping that you talked about, Jody, but I know you. there's clearly even more to say.
Definitely so. Chris Malanfi, I think we have next.
Hey, y'all, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Thanks so much for this talk. I have had Swift on the brain for the last couple of weeks for very obvious reasons. I guess this is kind of call it an addendum to Nate's question about the moving target question. My question concerns what I call Taylor's double imperiality. We all now know, all of us good pop critics know what the term imperial phase means. Taylor seemed to be following a pretty predictable pattern of there was Can Do No Wrong Taylor circa 10 years ago around the 1989 album. She hit a bit of a wall just before the Reputation album. She materially had a fall off in sales and radio performance after that. And then in the last 3 to 5 years, she has become once again bulletproof in a way I've never seen in any pop artist I've ever covered. In fact, it has been argued that her 2023 is her equivalent to Michael Jackson's 1983, like that level of culture commanding stardom. And I'm sort of wrestling with this because I just had to write a Why Is the Song #1 piece last week about Fortnite. And I went back to my piece about Antihero, which is all of 18 months old, and realized that even then I was sort of making the argument for, oh, Taylor seems to be pulling off some very amazing things for somebody who's already past her peak. Little did I know the new peak was coming. My 18-month-old piece now looks hopelessly out of date. And so again, like Nate's moving target question, have you all wrestled with how did this artist pull off a second version of this? Is it simply the winner take all economy? Is it something intrinsic to Taylor and her business model, let's call it? I've been trying to figure it out, and I'm kind of at a loss. Yeah, so I'll leave it there. Anyone?
Trying so hard not to say all the things. No, Christa, go.
I'll jump in and say, at least in my chapter, I use Kristen Lieb's life cycle of a female pop star. And that is an example of something that's been really helpful for me from like totally outside of Taylor Swift studies to kind of explain her career in many ways. But like you said, I think that in some ways she and Beyonce almost explode the model at a certain point. Like they're following this model, and then now we have people who I suppose it's protected status in Lieb's model, but it's just kind of surpassed, I think, what people expect of the female popular star and the female pop diva. And I agree with you, it's kind of confounding. And with that in mind, though, I think our expectations that these pop stars are going to have certain peaks and short-lived careers is a part of this, right? We're seeing two divas have much longer careers than they were ever probably expected to have.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that 100%. And I think that it's certainly not just the winner take all model, but I do think that, I think that there are a number of different my like basic diagnostic for Taylor Swift is a deeply uninteresting one, right? Which is a kind of combination of virtuosic businesswoman and right place, right time. There's lots of stuff which I think is the book as a text kind of points to, right? That she's coming up at the time during which has the capacity to craft this massive online fandom, but she's also coming up at the time where she benefited from being able to sell physical objects and set up a standard for fans purchasing her physical objects, and in a way that is no longer available to contemporary musicians who are coming up now, rather than when Taylor Swift was in the 2000s, and that we've got this a kind of the decay of a number of different kind of consensus mechanics, and a journalism structure that has had its supports pulled out from under it, and that is instead, chasing advertising linked clickbait. And so that means that connecting what you're saying to the one point of consensus that we seem to have, Taylor Swift, is valuable. So, I think it is certainly not just that, but I think that my ultimate analysis of it would connect deeply to the variety of ways that we can diagnose a winner-take-all structure unfolding in these various spaces.
If I can just say, sorry, my chapter is not about this at all, but I just had, I kind of feel differently about this new album. I feel like in my classes that I'm getting more like critique and disgust from my students than I ever had before about albums from Taylor Swift. Like I forget, I think I just played like something from her in class and they were like, oh, the new album, and I just thought, wow, that's like just not a response I've heard before. So I do think there's the possibility of fatigue and overexposure right now for her. I don't know, in terms of this question of like, can she do no wrong or whatever?
I mean, two follow-up thoughts. One, it's fascinating to me because I've noticed the fans getting a little louder in a negative direction, the way you just described. And I'm noticing the critics starting to recant in the opposite direction, saying a week or two later, oh, I was a little hasty about that Taylor Swift album. It's actually better than I thought. That dynamic I find fascinating. And second of all, I've been milking this for about a decade now, but I coined a term called the AC/DC rule, for how things that are the follow-up to something else is really a reflection of how people felt about the last thing, not the thing they're actually consuming. So this record-setting opening for Tortured Poets is actually all about the Eras Tour and Midnights and everything she did in the prior 18 months. And it is entirely possible that people will now consume this 31-track album and come to a negative conclusion about it. And the next album will suffer as a result of that, but time will tell if any of that plays out. Anyway, thank you all for chiming in. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a lot more to be said about the blowing up of models. And we sort of need to talk about a millennial pop star model, I think, because Drake as well, is
Sure.
breaking the model of the hip hop career cycle. And all of that has to do with how the business has changed and the internet and all of these things. And so there's a lot to consider. And the question of no new people coming up strong enough to challenge for whatever reasons. Next question from Pam Thirschwell. Pam, you there?
Oh, Pam says she can't speak.
I'll scroll back to her question. Okay. She says, I wondered if any of you have thoughts about Tavi Gevinson's fan fiction, the zine she published a week or two ago. I loved it. It feels like it taps into my own ambivalence about Tortured Poets and Swift generally. Is it okay to wish Taylor would write something other than autofiction? I miss the death of the author feelings of folklore and evermore. But at the same time, I also want to ask the panel if they think the song Tortured Poets is about Maddie or Joe or some amalgam of both of them. But yeah, I think the Tavi Gevinson fan fiction and Taylor's autofiction question.
I personally haven't read the Tavi Gevinson, but I'm going to pull it up from the link.
Yeah, I also haven't read the Gevinson. I have a lot of thoughts on autofiction.
Feel free.
Okay, all right. I don't want to. I just feel like I guess this is my job. Is that
I
I'm supposed to be doing
haven't
this.
read it either, and I've also been out of the loop. I'm also trying to finish up the draft of my monograph this month. So I've been had to shift myself out of Swift a little bit into the other book before I come back again. So all is more up on the current things.
Taylor, take a nap challenge. Yeah, I mean, a book that a lot of a book that a colleague of mine just dropped, Anna Kornblue. The book is called Immediacy, which I haven't read the Gevinson, but I have read Anna Kornblue's book, which there she's suggesting that immediacy, the kind of an aesthetic mode that she is tracing from everything from front-facing cameras to fourth wall breaking to the memoir and autofiction, is characteristic of our contemporary stage capitalism. So to me, I've been really thinking about that as a way, a really useful heuristic for understanding Taylor Swift and what's going on there. And yeah, I think that there's, this is on the one hand, something that she's been curating since her first albums, right? Encouraging fans to associate her lyricism very, very closely with herself, her autobiography. And that has been incredibly lucrative for her. That is a strategy that works very well. And that it means that when she does something like put out a 31 song album, I have been referring to the album not as an album, but as a data dump for those fans who are going to go through and try to piece together whether she's singing about, like, which song she's singing about Maddie Healy and which song she's singing about Joe Alwyn. And my answer to that is I don't know, and I am not gonna try to find out. But that, like, for fans, right, that's the project that they're engaging in, and that project is very lucrative to Taylor Swift. It means that her, that she's filling up the top of the Billboard charts because people are listening over and over again, and they're discussing her songs, and all of them on this 31 song album, right, that nothing can be left out because this whole text is understood to be, holistically meaningful, right? It's very, very lucrative for her. And that even if she released an album and said, guys, this isn't autofiction, this isn't about me anymore, her fans would probably not listen to that directive, or would understand it to be a coded directive to, like, interpret in a different way of it being about her, right? That's just the precedent that she has set, and that she has derived a lot of success from that precedent. And it would be very difficult, I think, for her to move away from it without doing some, I think, really drastic things. So yeah, I would also love for Taylor Swift to move away from autofiction, but that I think that there's, kind of bigger structural stuff going on beyond just that. This is a way that Taylor Swift likes to write her music, and is something that we can use to point in a lot of other directions too, about the way that it feels like maybe the mediation of the self is just getting more and more and more kind of proximate and, like, inescapable for all of us, and even for billionaire top of the music industry Taylor Swift.
Thanks. And we have one more from Caleb Goldschmidt.
I am not turning on my video because I am recovering from surgery today, but I have a question about money. And I know it's kind of the obvious thing given, like, Taylor's version and the billionaire status, but I was thinking more about the ways that copyright and property owners treat their stuff about as property and, like, things that they can invest in over and over again. And I'm thinking specifically about most recently with the document data dump and the ways that fans have been rereading previous material and trying to, like, find hints about Maddie or whatever, or the financialization of and the disaggregation of her albums and the playlist that she put on Apple Music. And I'm seeing this as more and more like what Disney does than what, like, an artist would typically do. And I'm wondering how the volume is dealing with all of that finance bro stuff that's going on with what she's been up to lately, and if it's dealing with that beyond just the question of copyright.
All right, I'm responding to this because it feels like Caleb, that is like a whole book that you're proposing there. I feel like what you're proposing is like
So sorry.
a delightful, like slim little like polity or like verso volume. Can't wait to read that forthcoming from you. No, that like there are definitely folks, I'm thinking like Georgie Carroll's chapter talks a little bit about the kind of financialization of fandom, and like the way that not just Taylor Swift's fandom, but like all large fandom is kind of constructed and encouraged, and the interests that serves. So there's some of that in there. I don't know if we've got other like, yeah, Christa.
Well, there was a talk at the study day that addressed this in a like kind of exactly what you're saying, Caleb, where Robin James talked about Taylor Swift turning her songs into assets as like the ultimate chill girl move, which I think it's also sort of hard to think, like after what we've seen Swift do over the past 4 years, she has no chill, but for what you're saying, right, this way that she's investing in these re-recordings and is able to make money off of her assets. And that was a part of the study day. Unfortunately, Robin wasn't involved in the volume, but we loved her work and hope that it comes out in some form, because I think it gets at exactly what you're talking about.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
I mean, I don't know that I can write a whole volume on this, but I definitely have ideas.
All right, I think we've reached our turning into a pumpkin moment. So I would just want to thank everyone, all of the editors and authors and attendees for this great session, and remind you that on Monday, we'll be back with John Shaw talking with Francesca about Louis Armstrong and modernism and many other things. So thanks very much to everybody.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Thank you, everyone.
And thanks again to all the authors, for being here.
So excited to download this chat because it is popping.
Yes. That is what I'm doing right now too.
Francesca, are you still there? Can you stop the record?
Yes, here we go.